in the type of medicine you practice, you want to focus holistically, right? And so I'd like to touch on some of that, where a lot of your content talks about the mind and spirit, not just the body. So can you talk to me a little bit about that and why that's so important to you, and some practices? And again, this is the Sparks of Gratitude podcast. So, what gratitude means to you in all of this as well.
Yeah, it's also been an evolving process for me, I would say, through that kind of understanding the role of mental health as we dove into that research. And then I mentioned we started to see people who really struggled with, maybe they had trauma, abuse, or other trauma when they were younger. And I started to see that play out over and over again, where there was a trauma or something that happened, and then later they developed this physical ailment, chronic disease, autoimmune condition. And so I was forced really to look into that more and realize, okay, what's the connection between that kind of brain mental health side and things that have happened to us and the way that our whole body kind of responds to that process. Read a number of books and went through the research, and then really was super impressed by what I started to see, that the way that we kind of allow, initially I should say, trauma or hard things, they become kind of hardwired into our brain. And especially if we're not doing something to kind of release that on a daily basis. And so as you go through struggles and trauma, it changes the way that the brain is signaling. I talked about this patient of mine whose cortisol levels were just totally tanked. And they had been through, that couple had been through just some really heavy stress and trauma through a business that they own, through some relationships. So for me, it was kind of watching that process play out in patients and then trying to implement that in my own life. I did some research with the Heart Math Institute, with their tools that they use as far as being able to measure getting your kind of neurofeedback or heart rate variability biofeedback, I should say, and see like what's your nervous system doing as you are stressed and worried. And then what about when you do some deep breathing? And then what about when you pull in gratitude? And for me, it was so big. I learned that the brain has this negativity bias. And so if we allow it, if we're not intentionally taking it in a different direction, it's going to go to a place of negativity. It seems like just naturally it tends to have this negativity bias as a protective mechanism. And so when we wake up and we're already thinking about our stressful day and the things that we have to do, and worried about maybe some conversations that we had with somebody yesterday, and worried about maybe finances or whatever it might be, then our brain stays in this place of negativity and stress and fight or flight. And we actually, through the research, I realized there are specific things we can do to take it out of that. We don't have to use a prescription medication to take your mind out of that place of anxiety. Now, there are some people that we need prescriptions for sure. But for most people, we're able to kind of give them tools. And I found for myself, as I was saying, as I was feeling that weight and stress on my own self and through some of the heavy things that we've been through, to be able to implement gratitude was life-changing for me. And I'll just tell you one sort of process that I figured out for myself and through the research. So I started to notice, we started writing it in a 5-minute journal, and we'd start the day with gratitude and end the day with gratitude, kind of like you were talking about. And then I started to notice, through that process, as I was kind of pondering on it, maybe praying about it and expressing gratitude, if I just physically smiled as I did that, it changed the way that my brain interpreted what was happening around me. And it's just such a simple thing that you can do. But as you start to ponder on, like maybe a loved one or something kind that somebody did for you, or the blessings that you have, and you just smile, it adds to the brain's interpretation of positivity. And it changes over time. The more that you do it, the way that your brain is wired. So I learned from way back in my neuroscience degree that nerves that fire together wire together. And so if we have a negative situation that's related to a relationship, our work, things we're doing on a daily basis, then every time we do that thing, our brain is interpreting this negativity and stress. But if we instead maybe if we're going through a difficult relationship and we instead say, okay, I'm going to focus on positivity about my spouse or about my son or daughter, And so you smile and you think positive things as you think about that person. It actually changes the neural connections in your brain so that next time when you interact with them, maybe not next time, maybe 30 times from now or 50 times from now, it starts to change the way that your brain is interpreting the things that they're doing or the things that are happening to you. And so just such powerful tools that I realized we could give people that and allow them to make changes in their lives, not just from their mental health standpoint, but also in their physical health.